All right, guys, this is Norval Central coming back at you with another YouTube video. And man, it has been a very, very, very long time. It's probably been a year since I probably posted on YouTube at this point. And Florida State, let's face it, the big win against Alabama early in the 2025 season, you have those two easier games, and then you basically just come off the rails at the end of the year, basically losing 7 of your last 9 to end the year. And it just feels like Florida State is in a time of just despair. I mean, you look at the way that I created this account way back in December of 2019, and Florida State was coming off a rough time. They fired Willie Taggart. I actually started the account when Odell Haggins was actually the interim head coach, and then they were still trying to figure out who the coach was going to be. And Florida State has come through at a situation now where they have 6 losing seasons in 8 years. And coming as a Florida State fan back in the day, whenever Bobby Bowden had kind of take over his the rest of his era there, and then you bring in Jimbo Fisher, having the over 40 seasons in a row without a losing record, and now all of a sudden you're having this issue of inconsistency, and the program's trying to find its way around. Florida State fans are trying to find a way to be positive. So I'm actually no longer going to be working for Chop Chat and writing for them, so I have a little bit more time on my hands to be able to focus on my social media accounts, YouTube account, different things like that. And I think it's really important for me to get back to the basis of what made me who I am today. And I'm really blessed for the opportunity. And hopefully you can come along for the ride. So I'm going to have some collaborations coming up pretty soon with a couple different individuals. But Florida State's season, as most of the fan base has kind of seen, is kind of up in the air. Mike Norvell is kind of on the hot seat at this point. The administration did their little evaluation comprehensive assessment, and you see the team went 2-2 in that stretch, and then they were able to bring him back. I think the situation was that they were wanting to see him beat NC State and then turn around and beat Florida and go 7-5, but he ended up going 5-7. So you're trying to figure out what you have in Mike Norvell. Is he going to be able to do this? I mean, this is a thing that a lot of people have to really think about. Florida State has not won a road game since November of 2023. That is almost 3 years ago at this point by the time we start the season. And Florida State, they're going to have New Mexico State open up the year, but fans are looking for something to be positive about. And I think there's 3 things that you have to look for in this season. The first thing is going to be Ashton Daniels at quarterback. They've already named the starter. I know a lot of people are talking about Kevin Sperry and also Malachi Marshall being the 2 guys that they wanted to see, specifically Marshall, because he hasn't even enrolled in campus until just this summer. So you wanted to see what you had in those guys, but now you've already named the starter in Ashton Daniels, and you're looking at a guy that career-wise, he's had, I think it was 24 touchdowns and 22 interceptions during his time at Stanford and at Auburn. But you're looking at guys that are looking for Ashton Daniels with his potential that he had so far. You saw the 2 game sample size that he had against Vanderbilt and against Alabama. Had over 800 total yards, 5 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. Was able to rush for over 80 rushing yards in both of those games. And you're looking and saying, okay, if he can do that, what can he do in Florida State system when they don't have that much of difficult competition? Of course, they have SMU, they have Alabama, they have Miami, they have Florida, they have Clemson. They have teams that can be competitive, but having to play an SEC schedule back to back to back to back is going to be wearing on someone. And especially when you had Hugh Freeze that was there last year with Auburn, he didn't really utilize him that properly. And then you had a guy like Jackson Arnold who, let's just face it, he wasn't very consistent. And you saw the same thing with Thomas Castellanos last year. So you're just trying to figure out consistency there. Now, the good news is you have Trey Wisner, who's going to be there. Usman Chroma as well as at running back. Sam Singleton. You also have a Deuce Robinson that's coming back for his senior season. Makai Danzy, Javen Boggs, Devin Carter, Jason Lopez. You have all of those receivers and all that talent there, but can he be able to kind of get into his untapped potential and go from there? But he's a senior. He has to do this. This is the year that he has to do this. And I think it's important because Mike Norvell is calling the plays for this upcoming year. I know everybody looks at that and says, okay, the 2024 season didn't go well whenever DJ Uyunglele was there. Well, it's a new season. It's a new opportunity. And this team almost reminds me of this 22 season. They didn't have a huge roster that was going to blow you away, but they had enough pieces to be successful. I just wonder if, when kind of Ashton Daniels comes through this situation, if he's able to do this. Because really, you need someone to do this. It's not just going to be just the Alabama game and then let's go about our day. If you beat an SMU, you stay close to Alabama, and you go into Louisville maybe 4-1 or 5-1, Wonder what's going to happen. But that's safer to see safe than sorry. I mean, you have to figure out what you're going to do about winning road games. And I think that Louisville game, specifically that stretch of Louisville, Miami, and Clemson, is going to be a huge factor in what Florida State's going to do for the rest of the year because you got to see what they're going to do when they respond from adversity. The second thing I'm going to be watching for is the offensive line. Offensive line had a lot of good pieces last year, specifically with Micah Pettis. Luke Pettibone is another guy as well. I think those two guys were massive for Florida State. Coming off the left side, I think Xavier Chaplin, kid from Auburn and Virginia Tech, he started over 32 games last year. Also, or last year in his career, and I think it's really important to figure out what he's going to be as an offensive tackle. If he's able to provide you services at the left tackle position and going to be able to kind of have Ashton Daniels' blind spot, it's going to be really important over 6'5", 330 pounds. He's a prototypical tackle that you want in the system, but you're kind of looking at some of the guards and the centers there. You got a Braden Joyner, you got a Sandman Thompson, you got an Andre Otto, who I think is going to be really good this year. And then you're kind of looking over at that right side. What are you going to do? Are you going to have Nate Paps there? Is he going to move on the inside? I just don't know how it's going to factor in. You would think that the offensive line is going to be a little bit worse than last year. I think they were a little bit above average, specifically about the expectations and bringing in a lot of guys. You also have to bring in a lot of guys for the recruiting trail. You cannot keep plugging and playing in transfers. I understand the Miami Hurricanes, for example, are doing really well in being able to get those transfers on the offensive line, but you have to develop some of those guys too. So I know it's going to be a lot to ask for, specifically for Andre Otto, but he's a redshirt junior at this point. He's got 2 more years remaining, so it's his time to shine. Jonathan Daniels is also another guy as well. Porte is another one too. I mean, it just kind of goes to show you, like even a Jaden Todd, who they're kind of high on as well. There's going to be times where you're going to have to be able to showcase what you have on the offensive line, and they're going to be able to protect Ashton Daniels, or you're going to see a Kevin Sperry, you're going to see a Malachi Marshall. So there's going to be opportunities for the offensive line to go through there. Herb Hand has done a phenomenal job at his different Power Four stops, and I think this is going to be the opportunity that he needs for Florida State to kind of take advantage there because their offense is only going to be as good as their offensive line is. And lastly, I think this is one more important factor too, is we all thought the defensive line was going to be great last year. We thought it was going to be successful because you had a James Williams who had a factor in with Tony White and also with just some other coaches as well, specifically during his time at Nebraska. And just looking at the offensive line and defensive line, the trenches are going to be really important to figure out what you're going to have against the Clemson and the Miami and the Floridas and the Alabamas. I think are going to be factored into that. But you look at Rylan Kennedy, for example, the Texas A&M defensive end transfer. He only had 2.5 sacks last year. The potential is there. He only played football since his eighth grade year. So you want to see him more productive as he goes through his collegiate career. And Florida State only brought in one pass rusher through the portal. Now, obviously, they did have 8 defensive linemen in their recruiting class coming in this fall, but can you rely on a lot of true freshmen? I think you can probably rely on Jalen Anderson. But in terms of what you're going to see this year, you're going to have Kevin Wynn step up. He had injuries last year and only played in 4 games. Mandrell Desir, we all know what he was last year with the freshman All-American tab. And then his brother, Daryl Desir, has got to step up as a defensive end this year. So you're kind of looking at what you're going to have in this year. And I think the defensive line has got to mesh. Everything's got to be together because year two in Tony White's system, the 3-3-5 defensive set and 4-2-5, and even like a 4-3 that he run too with the hybrid sets, you're even looking at a guy like Daniel Lyons. They speak very, very highly of him. I don't really know if I want to buy that type of stock just yet. I do think he's a phenomenal player in terms of being that depth piece, but I just wonder if he can take that elevated role as a starter. A guy like Deontay McCray is another guy I'm looking at to see what they can do there. Jordan Sanders, a guy from Texas State that they brought in this past offseason, they've had a couple of misses in terms of what they had on the defensive line and what they wanted to bring in. Kind of like a John Walker, he actually went to Ohio State. I just wonder what's going to factor into a lot of these decisions that Florida State's going to do this season, and the defensive line has got to be a big factor because you looked at what Alabama did when they basically caused havoc to Ty Simpson in that opener against Alabama. I wonder what's going to happen with that because when you have a Darian Mensah and you're playing him on the road, what are you going to do in that situation? When you have a new quarterback for Clemson, you're trying to rile the crowd up and everything and trying to figure out what you're going to do there. You got to bring pressure to Clemson too. Florida, another example. They got their own quarterback situation going on over there. But I just think those are the three factors that you're going to go into. It's going to be Ashton Daniels at quarterback. You're turning over the offensive line, figuring that out, and then the defensive line. I think it's going to be very trench heavy. Florida State's got to do what they got to do specifically to get over on the ACC and get back to where they want to get to. But I really appreciate all your love and support. I'm going to try to be as consistent as I can with videos now that I have a little more free time on my hands with the scheduling. I thank you all for the love and support, specifically on my Instagram account at Norvell Central, my Twitter account at Central Norvell. I'm even doing a little bit on TikTok as well. So I really thank you for all the love and support on all my platforms, and I hope to see you soon. Comment your thoughts on what you think is the three most important parts of this season for Florida State. And as always, go Noles.